Hey everybody, welcome to Insight Radio. I am your host, Danielle Egnew, and you are a fly on the wall too everywhere. Man, how are you doing? Woo! Getting through some of this tough astrology, and holy buckets, how about this eclipse? This full moon blood flower eclipse. How many different titles can we have? That actually eclipsed when it was in Sagittarius, which was massive. And of course, lunar eclipses are all about evaluating what you've got going on in your shadow self. You know, what are you hiding from yourself? What's something that you could benefit from bringing into the light? Man alive, I tell you, it was quite something. I know a lot of people who are really struggling emotionally through this lunar eclipse time. I had my own rodeo with it. I woke up at about 1:50 in the morning and was just awake on that Wednesday morning that the eclipse was happening. And then about 5:40 a.m., when the eclipse was really kind of going on, right after that, I fell right asleep. And so that energy of clearing out things that have gotten in your way or missed opportunities or parts of the shadow self that you're not dealing with because maybe you're embarrassed, maybe you're afraid to let people know that you've got some of those, spiders in the closet, so to speak. But this was really about that time frame of letting it all go. So, that was a big deal. I've had a lot of clients that really struggled with that. So I'm glad that that is in the rearview mirror. And, we're going to talk about the freedoms. What is freedom really in America? What is it? What is freedom in the world? What are emotional freedoms? What really defines a freedom, and how do we really truly become free? What are the illusions of being free, and what are the actual tenets of being free? What does being free mean? And this was a big, big concept that was basically dropped on my head by the angelic realm as we were all going through these big shadow periods of gross ickiness that we were going through. And some people didn't. I know a few people who had a really great eclipse, center. So good for you. I had a rough one. So I think it's not good or bad if you had a rough or a good one. I think it's all about what did you learn? And pardon me for clearing my throat a lot today. Of course, we've got the wonderful, beautiful, seasonally afflicted cottonwood trees blowing and letting their cotton blow everywhere. It looks like a snowstorm in Montana right now as we barrel into June. And of course, I have my beloved cottonwood allergies, which make me sound kind of sexy. I got the Brenda Vaccaro going on today. It's thanks to the cottonwood doll. So that's what's happening. Excuse me. So moving on through the cottonwoods. Freedom. What the hell is it? The word freedom gets tossed around like mad. And, freedom is very different depending on whose lens is viewing it. I know for a fact that if I were a woman in one of the Middle Eastern countries where I'm supposed to be wearing a burqa, that's the outfit that covers everything except for their eyeballs only peek out. And I know that if I was a woman where any skin showed at all besides just my eyeballs, my idea of freedom would maybe be wearing my hair up in public where people could see it, if of course it didn't rub me religiously the wrong way. So freedom is different for everybody across the entire globe. Because I happen to live in the United States of America, in the great state of Montana. Oh, poor Montana. Poor Montana. God, it's just trying the Bible Belt over this last election has been hiked up so high. And it's like we're the Canadian touching of the Bible Belt right now, and it's not really going over very well in our local culture that all this national legislation is trying to be passed here. But that is a podcast for another time. Because when we're looking at freedoms, it does come into play. What is freedom? What state do you live in? Freedom is going to be all kinds of different things depending on the state you live in the United States. So we're going to talk really, it's for everybody, this podcast, but from the American perspective of freedom, that word just gets thrown around, usually as a recruiting mechanism, especially for the military. Our good folks of the military, our men and women there, who are out there fighting hard for the freedoms that we all enjoy. And in America, our idea of freedom is being able to say whatever we want and go to whatever church we want and vote whenever we want. And right now, many of those issues are being challenged because it's harder to vote in America than it's ever been. I mean, there are some insane rules being passed across this nation that make it insanely hard to try to vote. Yet we consider those part of our, quote, freedoms here in the United States. So, we tend to look at freedoms as things we can do, right? Like voting or driving or being able to marry the person you love regardless of their gender and your gender. This is what we tend to look at as freedoms. Yet freedoms go way beyond what we can do. Yes, what we do is important, and we need to be able to have as many freedoms as possible for this democratic republic experiment called America to continue to succeed. And we have a large group right now trying to step on those freedoms and make sure that we all believe in the same God and we all marry the gender that someone else thinks is right for us and that we all live our lives a very specific certain way. And that's not really free. So it's very fascinating that many people who use the word freedom are using it to mean you need to do things like me. And that's not really free either, right? So really, what is freedom? If we were to take away the definition of stuff you can do because you want to do it, you want to own a gun, you want to own as many boats as you want, what is it? What is freedom? Well, we could go on all day long and then some and into the next year about political definitions of freedom. But this isn't a political podcast today as much as it's a spiritual podcast. What does it mean to be free? And why is there a concentrated effort in the United States right now to limit freedoms, real freedoms, not the buzzword freedoms, not, I got my shirt and it says freedom, guns, America on the back, not that kind of freedom. Why is real freedom of the spirit being suppressed in the United States? Well, in order to really figure this out, we got to go back in time. And this is where, like, if you were watching a movie, we'd have the black and white montage of the flip calendar going back in time. And there'd be a montage of different people doing different things in black and white Movieville. Well, we're going to go back to the Declaration of Independence, which really, truly, if we look at it, this is something that's been coming to light lately in many aspects. Yeah, the Declaration of Independence was not written because the people who were the colonists in the United States really believed in equality for all humans. It was written, all men are created equal. And that meant if you weren't a slave, because a lot of the people writing that had slaves, right? So all white men, all white male business owners were created equal. And really the document was inspired. What made them mad was taxes. Here the king of England was taxing everybody for huge shipments, big taxes on tea and all kinds of other things. But really, England wasn't doing a whole lot for the colonies at that point, except taxing everything that came over here. So really, it was about financial freedom. It was about not being overtaxed. And it was about being able to carry guns if people wanted to and to defend themselves and their property. And, the life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Okay, there was that in there too. Yet, still really what drove it was a need for financial freedom. So when we think about money as a controlling mechanism, here in the United States, money's controlled everything, the whole world, right? And so if we really step back and we look at this phenomenon of money controlling everything, what we have an opportunity to see is that if we're going to be free, like really free, because we're going for the ultimate idea of freedom, what would that be? What would that look like? That'd be no bills, right? That'd be owing nobody anything. That would be living a life you wanted to live because you didn't have to kill yourself working so you could pay for X, Y, Z in your life that you were really crazy about. That in essence is what freedom would be. But think about how much we define freedom versus financial enslavement, right? So really, if we're talking the spiritual tenets of freedom, money is just an energy. And how we choose to use that energy is huge. It really is huge. And it depends on who and what we are, and it depends on our view of that financial freedom or not. For some people, it's not very freeing to only have $5 in the bank and live under a bridge. That would make them crazy and afraid. For other people, they don't want a house. They don't want the responsibility of a mortgage and all those property taxes. It's funny. I had a friend of mine texting me when COVID was going on, and they were very interested in moving to Montana. And I said, well, my God, they were coming from California. And they said, oh, my God, the housing prices there are so cheap. And, in comparison to California, they surely are, or certain places in California. Yet I kept reminding this person that the taxes here are very high. And it's funny because, this is traditionally a red state. Don't take my money. Except bottom line is we pay out the butt in taxes here. Our vehicle licensing fees are insane. Our income tax is super high. Our property tax is really high. So we might not have sales tax, but we are paying so many taxes in Montana where the average really wage is around $10 or $11 an hour, if even that. It's a very expensive place to live. The rents are through the roof now. The housing is out of control. The taxes are really high, but the wages are very low. So it's kind of a weird place to live if you're more of a traditional American who relies on a regular job, a 9-to-5 job, to make everything happen. So people see Montana as this great place of freedom for them. And hey, if you're selling your great big house in a big metropolitan area, it'll be a huge place for freedom for you. Because you'll be able to buy a house with cash, sock the rest of those millions of dollars away and retire early in Montana. Really. However, for most people, that's not the case. And what is freedom in that case? Well, freedom is not being enslaved by debt. It's not being enslaved to a system or enslaved to money. And spiritually, it's about doing what you love. So where is this magic little sweet spot in being free as an American, okay, which for many means a lack of financial obligation. And it also means being able to do what you want with your time. How does that work when we live in a country that is so deeply expensive to live in? There are people all over the place who are leaving the United States to go to places like, my goodness, Portugal, Belize, to go to places like Costa Rica and a million of them, a million of these countries where you don't have to kill yourself to just have a decent roof over your head. And yeah, you give up some conveniences, like there's not always internet and power, and there's not always running water in some of the third world countries, but it gets back online, and you're not going to die for 24 hours if you don't have your internet, whatever. So what is freedom? Well, I think we've established what it's not, okay? How do we find the sweet spot between keeping a roof over your head and some reliable transportation around, whatever that is for you? Some people don't want cars anymore. A lot of Gen Z and millennials and Gen Ys, for that matter, are not wanting to own large homes or have big fancy cars because they've watched their Gen X parents drown in debt. Or in some cases, they're very bottom of the generation baby boomer parents drown in debt. So it's been an interesting time frame. So what I've been given to share today is that our idea of freedom has got to come from liberating ourselves from a lot of identity that goes not only along with the consumerist stuff, and we know what that is, the keeping up with the Joneses, and I have to have a big house to be important, and blah. COVID has really spit us out the other side of a lot of those ideologies. And a lot of companies at this point, they're not even hiring people to come back into an office. They don't want a brick and mortar office anymore because it's so expensive to obtain that brick and mortar building floor or 2 or 3 floors in a San Francisco high rise. I can't even imagine the rent on 2 or 3 floors of a San Francisco high rise. I can't even get my brain around it. And employers are recognizing that people would rather stay home, work very adequately from their own computers, do a great job, do a better job because they're sitting in their PJs and they can really focus on work instead of focusing on a commute. People are beginning to have freedom in terms of their traditional workspace because they're getting their time back. Okay? So how do we delineate what freedom really is from keeping up with responsibilities. Because the tendency, especially as we hit our mid-40s and into our 50s, our tendency is to say, I don't want to do something I don't want to do. And really, you shouldn't do anything you don't want to do for work at this age. You really shouldn't. There are such things as responsibilities and being accountable to your family members and your spouses and upholding your end of what you agreed to uphold. I mean, that's different. That's called adulting. Okay, so I think we know the distinction here. I mean, as much as I would love to just stick a guitar pick in my shoe and disappear off into the desert and play gigs for beer and tips, actually, I would love that for 5 minutes. But then I would miss my wife and my child and our beautiful home and our dogs. And so there is a balance. Freedom is about balance. Okay? This is bullet point number 1, balance. So we've got to establish balance in our life if we're going to have true freedom. And that's balance between being accountable and being silly and having fun. That's balance between budgeting and the spiritual balance between letting money just go out there and spending it on something fun because you work and you want to have a fun life. It is balance. And of course, in our American culture, and like I said, I'm not sure how it is in the UK or Australia or Canada day to day. I mean, I might have visited a couple of these places, but I've never lived there. Yet in America, we're really pushed to be a work slave for a large machine for the least amount of money possible. And then we're really pushed to give all that money away to great big other things like banks for giant houses and brand new cars. Now listen, I'm not going to spit on you if you got a brand new car. I got a brand new car in 2020. I've been leasing vehicles because I've been trying to figure out a vehicle I liked because I'm a water sign, I'm a Pisces, and we kind of change our mind every 6 seconds. But the other part of it too is I really, really wanted a vehicle that I could believe in for my needs. And plus we had Road Angel and other things. And I think I've talked about my Jeep, Lily. I love my Rubicon. She's yellow. Hella Yella, it's called. And I made a conscious decision to purchase that vehicle, which isn't the most expensive vehicle in the world. It's not the least expensive, okay? Yet I made a conscious decision to put money towards that so that I could have the vehicle I wanted and then just know it was there and just continue to fix it up and keep it, finally, because that's where I was at. So to me, knowing that that vehicle is going to be paid off at a certain time, to me, that is freedom because I know which car I have. I know how much it takes in gas. I know how much it is in insurance. And in Montana, my vehicle license and plates are just going to go down as we go by with time. So to me, that was freedom. For somebody else, it might be selling your vehicle and getting rid of that big gas barfing thing in your driveway and not having to carry insurance on it. I live in a state that's massive. Montana's massive. It's the 4th largest state in the union. It's huge. I mean, you can take most of New England. You can take I think I counted one time, 15 states and crush it all into the same landmass of Montana. We can take most of the East Coast states and smash them all in here. So for me, freedom is being able to get in my vehicle and go wherever I want in an area where there's not a lot of roads. So of course, that takes financial support right now. So for me, that's a choice I make in my freedom. So freedom is it's about balance, okay? The other aspect of freedom is ease of mind, okay? So the first tenet is balance in your life. You got to balance work life, you got to balance spending, and you got to balance saving, okay? That creates part of the fulcrum of freedom. The next one is ease of mind. And with number 2 being ease of mind, what does that mean? Well, this one's harder. I actually think it's easier, you guys, to strike balance in your life than it is to strike ease of mind. Ease of mind, as these angels put it to me here. If I may speak very plainly, gang, okay? Ease of mind is just putting to rest the crap you can do nothing about, but really actually letting it go, okay? We are never free if all we're doing is worrying continuously. Now, what is the fine line between being accountable and worrying? Well, worrying is the process of hamster wheel spinning every worst case scenario in a hyper-vigilant effort to try to not incur harm in the future. So you're playing out every crappy worst case scenario you possibly can, trying to identify the pitfalls and the weird spots in that particular timeline. So if that timeline happens upon you, you won't get tripped up by it. It is a hypervigilant trauma response, worry. And many of us do it. I do it sometimes. Jeez, I talk to angels and see timelines and can crunch space-time like I'm cracking a hazelnut. And I worry about stuff. Okay, it's human to worry. It's human. It's in our DNA, gang. Lack and limitation and starvation and being kicked out of your home and dying of the elements. Those are all things that have happened to our ancestors. Okay, eaten by a grizzly bear. All of it has happened. So ease of mind, we've got to balance. We've got to balance problem solving and letting it go. We have to make sure that we're not into such a form of hypervigilance that we cause ourselves anxiety. And the balance between that is just recognizing that, guess what? We are not God. No matter how much we try to plan for the future's kind of going to do what it wants anyway. And really, the best planning that we can do is to make sure, are you ready for this? Ease of mind. The best planning you can institute for yourself is making sure that your center, your emotional center, is not going to be rocked every single time something externally changes. All right? And again, you have to remember in America, we are trained to be neurotic and to be addicted. And we're trained that when we're really nervous, we go buy this or that. Or when we're really depressed, we get on this or that medication. Not that I'm saying that if you're on medication, you shouldn't be. I'm simply saying that that's our go-to, is something externally here. So ease of mind comes down, according to these, to these angels, it comes down to a decision to acknowledge that there's just some crap we are not going to have control over. Period. And you can worry about it till your ears bleed. But there's just certain stuff we don't have control over. We don't have control over space projectiles hitting the Earth. If there's a multi-trillion-dollar coup trying to happen in the United States to populate our individual courts in individual states with nutters, from that billion-dollar perspective, we can't do anything about that. We can only do what we can do in response to that. So again, worry. We got to get ease of mind somewhere. Finding some balance in your life, finding some ease of mind. Worry about some stuff, let other stuff go. But you got to get that ease of mind going. Balance and ease of mind make more room for freedom. The other portion of this is boundaries. Balance is about boundaries, and ease of mind can be boundaries, but boundaries are kind of their own category according to this angel. And the reason they're their own category, even though one could look at that as really balance, is that boundaries are their own category because it involves also not feeling guilty because you're not doing something. Now, this can get really confusing. Because where's the line from being accountable and being dependable and stepping up and doing what you say you're going to do and saying, nope, I'm not going to do that. Well, where the line comes in that I've been shown, boundaries are freedom. When somebody else is trying to guilt you into doing something because it's more convenient for them, you don't do it. If you have a friend or family member who always wants you to be part of something or part of a project or part of a business, and you start to get into it with them, and all of a sudden it's, oh, but can you do this, and can you do that, and can you do this, and can you make this call? And, no, the answer is no. And I'm going to give a shout across the bow to my fellas out there on this one. And the shout is that just in the same way, ladies, we have been sociologically conditioned to look for somebody to save us, and we give our power away, and I don't want anybody to be mad at me, and I can't do it, I'm just too tired. Yeah, that's into X chromosomes. We are trying to work that out because we've been so disempowered, ladies, that it just gets gross in there sometimes, right? I mean, it just does. That also being said, gentlemen, I would deeply ask you, out of respect, and I implore you with the most open heart here, to hear what I'm going to say. You know, it's in your genes to grab a female and just assume she'll handle it for you. It is genetic in you at this point, if you are a male, especially in the United States, that women are just going to pick it up for you somehow. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, that's not true. I'd never do that. But fellas, it's just something you got to watch, okay? And I'm not saying you all do it, but I know it's in your genome. How do I know this? Well, I've got wonderful friends. I've got wonderful gay male friends who no more look at a woman as their financial or emotional support system as my Pomeranian does, okay? Yet even I have gay male friends that, you know, if one of their female friends has something, they just take it over. They just bowl right over the top of them and take it over and start suggesting how, oh, I'm going to put this there. Or I'm going to use this way. I brought these curtains over. I'm hanging it up in your new house. I mean, there is this assertion of self and just putting them somewhere. And I don't see them do it to their other male friends, but they do it to the women. So guys, you got to fight against this dominion thing that is just in your genes. I'm sorry. Just like women, we got to fight against our, oh, I can't do it. Somebody needs to pay for me. I mean, these are huge imbalances where men just take from women and women just lay down and die and claim they can't do anything. Huge imbalances, fellas. So just be aware, gang. These are things that we got to look in ourselves because we're never free if we feel like everybody's stuff is our stuff. If I can just take what's yours because it's mine. Guess what? It's not yours. So that's not freedom. That's a fear consciousness. That's a fear consciousness that's been passed down. If I don't take that from you, I'll never have it again. And I'm not trying to pick on any of my fellas. You guys know I love you, okay? You just kind of got to watch it with the ladies. It's in your genome. And ladies, please stop. Please stop dating a guy just because he doesn't make $200,000 a year. I seriously will come push you in the mud. That is stupid. So let's get some balance in the 21st century. So if you really want to be free, okay, ladies, you can't disempower yourself completely and blame the world because you're not where you want to be. And men, you can't just bowl over the top of not just men, but women and take what they have and think they're going to be okay with it and then get mad because they get mad at you. There's got to be some balance. So when we talk about boundaries, that's what I'm talking about. I'm not trying to push everybody's buttons today. Hopefully you got to laugh through some of that. Is that boundaries are important. And it's important to be able to, let's go this route of some of my fabulous male gay friends that just take from women. They come in and just start eating their food and using their stuff and never replace it. And it's just like, what are you doing, dude? You know, a boundary would be saying to your friend, hey, I love that you feel so at home at my house. It would be so awesome sometimes if you'd bring over a salad and throw it in that fridge and then there'd be something that you'd like to eat prepared for you. Hint. You know, and in the same way, boundaries. You know, guys, if you've got some woman in your life that's just insisting that she just needs more and more money and she just can't do anything without you making all this money, being able to say, you know, I really love being able to be a provider, yet it would be really nice if I felt respected because I'm working really hard for this money and I don't feel very respected when it just turns into this QVC outlet. You know, it would be awesome to see you engaging in your own life purpose to draw together some sort of prosperity to go ahead and fund your QVC habit. That would be awesome. You know, boundaries, because we help each other grow with boundaries, gang. You know, we help each other grow that way. How are women supposed to feel empowered if we're enabled constantly that we can't make our own money? And of course, I'm being a little general here, but gentlemen, you know, how are guys supposed to realize that, oh my God, I could really get some pride in myself about making a really great salad and bringing it over and everybody will love my salad and I'm not just going expecting the women to take care of me. I mean, there's that provider mechanism, fellas, that would be awesome. And guys, I know a lot of you bring beer and stuff. Come on, ladies and guys, let's not get all butthurt today. We're talking about the boundaries that are necessary for us to grow, okay? And it's just, we're all trying to grow and be better. And we don't have to be mean to one another in our growth cycles. We can be kind. Yet I appreciate it if I have an intrinsic behavior that's stepping on somebody. I mean, it's really embarrassing to hear that. It's really embarrassing. Yet sometimes it's nice to recognize that my friends love me enough to say, girl, do you know you have a habit of blah? And I'm like, I do? I don't. I do not. And then we've got the I don't, not me person, right? I do not. And I'm like, no, you kind of do. And I'm wondering, where did that come from? And I'm thinking to myself, geez, I do have that habit. That sucks. I need to not be that person. So it gives me a chance to grow. So freedom, okay, balance in your life, ease of mind, how accountability versus working to death, ease of mind, being prepared and accountable, but not worrying to make yourself a crazy person. Having boundaries and being able to state your boundaries. I am not comfortable with, or could we do something else? This isn't my comfort zone. And sometimes our boundaries need to get pushed a little so we can grow, but I think we all know what we're talking about here. Because if we have within ourselves the voice to be able to voice healthily and with kindness our own willingness to participate with something, which is a boundary, if we can get our heads in check and not just go down this rabbit hole of death and doom, which is what American culture wants you to do, so they can sell you a bunch of products to make you feel better, and we can recognize that, just pick a religious text, good heavens, whether it's the Quran or the Bible or the Taoist teachings, which Taoism really isn't a religion, it's a modality. But if we were to look at that, with the birds of the air are provided for out of the Bible. They're not worrying about where their next meal's coming from. They're just living life. So these are aspects of freedom. And you'll notice this: balance, ease of mind, and boundaries. None of those are about things that we have. It's about how we live our life. It's about how we make choices. Now, we're not going to be free as long as we carry resentment. So let's talk about freedom killers. What kills freedom? Freedom killers. Resentment is a huge freedom killer. That's when, so let's go back to the very stereotypical, at this point, heterosexual relationship, where we're going to take a very stereotypical gender roles here. And we've got the disempowered lady who just swears she can't do anything or make any money, but sure, you can spend it. Girls, we like to shop. And then you've got the guy who's trying to be the big provider and look how special I am. And don't you love me for being able to put a roof over your head? But we've got an emotional leak in this situation. So our stereotypical woman is not empowering herself. So she's just this starving empath that's trying to feed this sense of self with buying crap while she sits at home, not really applying herself in the world in a way that would be productive for her. And then we've got this guy who is this enabler who is also a starving empath. And instead of saying, wow, I'd really like to be loved for who I am, instead of being a cash machine, he's just bleeding out into the universe. And so we've got a lot of bleed here. All right. So when we talk about freedom killers, resentment is the biggest one. So then you get a guy who starts to resent his partner, his female partner, in our little traditional, grotesquely stereotypical story. And he starts to really resent her because she might not be putting her purpose in the world. Now she starts to resent him, even though he's paying for everything under God's green earth for her. And her life really is just get up and go outside and, maybe they've got a new little one and she's got the freedom to be able to raise her child, thank God, at home. Yet she starts to resent him because when he comes home, and maybe especially if there's kids involved, she's been busy with those kids all day. Let's put kids in. Let's change the narrative. She's not just sitting home buying QVC. She's sitting home raising 2 babies. And she's tired. And she's grateful that her partner is out there working hard. Yet he comes home and he wants to get jiggy after she's been with screaming babies all day. And she's like, you got to be kidding me. I feel about as sexy right now as a dead dish rag. This isn't happening. And he's like, come on, baby, but I'm providing for you. What's going on? I need love too. So then this resentment comes from him, maybe, that he's not, I don't understand this. He doesn't understand her walk. He doesn't understand what being home with 2 kids screaming in your face all day is like. He doesn't understand why that doesn't make you feel sexy. So, he just sees it as a rejection. So then he's resentful because he's paying for everything. She resents him because he's not understanding how much effort maybe she gave up a career because she really wanted to raise these babies. But come on, man, meet in the middle on the emotional needs here. So here's this resentment that exists. And resentment is going to kill freedom. Because while we're busy being resentful, resentment is a full-time job. It is a full-time job to keep reminding yourself what you can't stand about somebody else and why you resent them for it. Oh, but you're going to keep doing your same behavior, by the way. But you're going to resent them while you're still doing your same behavior. And you're going to have 1,000 reasons why you're doing your same behavior. Right? It's going to be, well, I can't leave it. I've got these kids, or I can't go anywhere, or, well, I can't just go have an affair. Well, maybe I will go have an affair on my wife, but I'm not just going to go do that because I'm a father now. But God, I just, 1,000,010 reasons why not that you should go have affairs, everybody. Yet, resentment comes about when we are not handling our emotional needs ourselves. And there can be situations in partnerships where we enable a situation to such a point that the person that we've enabled it for just expects things, And these are not gender specific. I know same-sex couples. I know male couples where one couple might work at home and the other one goes to work, and the one comes home and wants dinner, and the one who's been home working is like, "What do you think I am, your maid?" And the male who's been at work is like, "Well, but you've been at home, so why didn't you put dinner in?" And the other guy's like, "'Cause I'm working, jackass. That's why I didn't put dinner in." That never goes well. And you see that with female and female relationships also. So, it's just the communication aspect is really important. So if we're going to talk about freedom killers, resentment is number one. We resent our life. We won't make any changes, honestly. And how do we cure that? How do we cure resentment? We add in the bomb of communication. Communication kills resentment. And we have to be willing to listen. We have to be willing to learn. But we also have to be willing to be honest about what's bothering us, and to do so with kindness, okay? So the other person can then enact balance, ease of mind, and boundaries, and address the issues that are bothering you, okay? So freedom killer, number one is resentment, and we can balance it out with communication. The other freedom killer is martyrdom. And which really could almost go in front of resentment, because resentment oftentimes comes after martyrdom. But we're gonna talk about martyrdom, and it's the best word that I could find to translate what these angels are talking about, because it's really a statement on trying to gain attention by giving away everything important to us and being the star of that moment for being supposedly selfless. Now, there are a few real martyrs in history and a few real martyrs out there. Yet, when you're talking about being a martyr, it's not a positive, okay? So a freedom killer is being the martyr, which is saying, "I have to do this. Oh, no, it's okay. I'll just work 24/7. You all go on the vacation. It's okay. I'll pay the bills and die like a mummy of solid death wrapped in my own dismay. But it's okay. I don't care." You're not going to be free as long as your mechanism for growing attention for yourself is being the martyr. And women, come on, ladies, we have a corner on the market in this one. Because traditionally, historically, we women were never really allowed to ask for what we wanted. Are you shitting me? We'd be thrown into insane asylums. We'd be disowned. We'd be beaten up. We'd have a chastity belt stuck on us, or our eyes ripped out. All kinds of terrible things if women asked for what they wanted. So how did women learn to get attention? Oh, I'll be Goody Egnew over here in the 1612 colony. And Goody Egnew, she just giveth away all of her own needs. And Goody Egnew would just give all of her eggs and starve. And oh, look at how hollow Goody Egnew's cheeks are. She's not eating even one speck of anything because she's giving it all to the church. Oh, look at Goody Egnew. Oh, Goody Egnew died. Oh, let's take Goody Egnew and make a beautiful ceremony and say, thank you, Goody Egnew, for giving your entire humanity to the collective. And let's move on. Oh, Goody Johnson. Look at Goody Johnson. She gives everything away. This is how women were able to get any damn bit of attention back in the day, was by acting like we didn't want any and we didn't need any. But that's how we got all the attention. Oh, look at poor Goody Johnson. Remember Goody Egnew died of starvation? Well, look at Goody Johnson over here. Goody Johnson, she just gives everything away of herself, and she works tirelessly and toils, and her hands are bleeding because all she does is sew day in and day night for the entire compound that we live in. Because let's not forget that our settlers back in the day were a little bit of a religious cult being kicked out of England because they were crazy, okay? So if you think about it, ladies, martyrdom. You're not going to be free as long as you're tying yourself to the only attention that you can get. And of course, men are martyrs too, trust me. I'll just work all day. Who cares if I ever get anything I want? We can all be martyrs, folks. But martyrdom, right? It kills freedom because we really believe that we have to enslave ourselves to a system or to duty in order to have an identity. So what kills martyrdom? Well, putting your purpose in the world kills martyrdom. And why don't we do that? Why don't we put our purpose in the world? Why? Because we're afraid we'll fail. It's easy to be the martyr and sit there and, oh, it's okay, I don't need anything, never mind. Blah. You know why that's blah? Is because it's false humility. And again, there are real martyrs out there, gang. There are people just doing the right thing who get killed for all the wrong reasons and they become actual martyrs. I'm assuming you know what I'm talking about here. Freedom cannot be achieved when we are not putting our purpose in the world. And sometimes that purpose might just be sitting there loving a tree while we're leaning on it and putting all that love in that tree. That might be our purpose for the day. And that might fight with balance and ease of mind and boundaries, especially with our accountability issues to our responsibilities. Yet as long as we are being reasonably accountable and we're not letting people down and we're not doing what I call taking our half out of the middle and then making everybody scramble to make up the difference on either side, we're going to have those boundaries and we're going to be able to put our purpose into the world. So many of us come from that old 20th century world where we feel heavily disempowered, gang. And again, I'm not trying to make anybody feel bad today. I would hope that you would find the humor in this because it's just true. And when we look at the freedom killers of resentment and martyrdom and false obligation, and that really goes under brainwashing. So we're going to separate martyrdom and false obligation because martyrdom is when you know it's not your responsibility, but you do it anyway for attention, okay? And I mean, anymore, some of this martyr behavior, if I were a psychotherapist, I might even just sort of break that down and not the people who really truly want to give. We just have givers in this world. Yet the folks who are doing it for attention, I mean, I would be tempted if I were a psychotherapist to break that down as a subset of borderline personality issues because that's when you're trying to manipulate people and blah, blah, and it gets weird. But if we're looking at false obligation, what we've got there is a brainwashing mechanism. That's when we think we have to own the house. And again, maybe this is the way it is for other westernized countries out there. So, I'm only speaking from the American perspective here, but there's so much pressure on Americans to own your own home. Let's look at that. Let's look at false obligation there. What is the benefit from owning your own home? Well, if you want to sell it later, you can. You have a roof over your head once you eventually pay it off 30 years later, if you pay it off. If you don't have second and third and fourth mortgages like many people in the USA do, because we are pressed to be addicted to buy things. If you get equity, by God, make sure you roll it into something else. But honestly, when we are looking at that false obligation, what we have is we have some very serious illusions that we're operating under. Because, okay, let's buy a house. Well, you're never going to own that house outright anyway. You're going to lease that property from the government until you're dead. It's called property taxes. You don't own your home. You might own your, sticks and wires and light bulbs and rooftops and roof shingles, but you don't own the ground it's on. I own my property. No, you don't. I have property in Montana, and I'm going to pay rent on that called property tax until I'm dead. And if I stop paying rent on that land to the government, they will take my land away from me. It doesn't matter how much money I put into it. It doesn't even matter if it paid off. If I stop paying those rent, if I stop paying those taxes, the government's going to take it back. So you never own the land your house is on. Now, is it a reasonable investment? Well, sure it is. But a false obligation is that I must have this in my life. And that kills freedom. I have to own this house. Do you? Well, okay, it might be a good idea. But let's look at our climate shifts. And for those of you that own homes out there, that's awesome. I mean, my wife and I would love to own a home. It's more difficult right now in this climate if you're a small business owner to own a home. Yet I know people who own homes who are so disappointed because they will have a hailstorm that eats their roof, and they, of course, have insurance. So they replace the roof with the insurance, and then they have a hailstorm again that eats the roof. And now, after a while, the insurance company doesn't want to replace that roof over and over again. And now they've got problems. So, home ownership has its highs and its lows. Yet the false obligation that you have to have one, that's weird. Now, is somebody going to be in a better position than me, maybe in 5 or 10 years, when really in the Rocky Mountain Belt and on our coasts, we're going to have these huge real estate bubbles that are just going to get bigger and bigger. And if somebody wants to sell their home, that's an amazing way to make money and an amazing retirement for people later on. Yet, again, you don't get something for nothing in this world. It's just not the way the trade-off and balance works. So freedom killers, resentment, martyrdom, and false obligation. Just be careful that you're not talking yourself into something that you have to do because you think you have to do it. What kills false obligation, what neutralizes that really, is taking a look and educating yourself at all options financially, but also false obligation could be a work. I have to work 100 hours or I'm not worthy of my boss's love and affection. I mean, look for the areas where you're doing something because you think you have to maintain a certain status in life or a certain identity. I mean, we do have to do certain things. Well, we don't have to. We don't have to do anything. I don't have to pay my bills. They can come repo my car and kick me out of my house and shut my phone off. They can do all of it. I don't have to do anything. I choose to pay for things so I can participate in this collective experience that we've had called society, which we're trying to change right now. But being able to change your life or have the freedom to change your life, if you're laboring under a false obligation that you have to work 100 hours a week, which isn't so much a deal anymore after COVID. COVID really came in and broke us out of a lot of this false obligation mentality, which thank God, because that false obligation thing, gang, was killing people. I had so many clients who were having heart attacks, men and women, because they were working 100 hours a week. Plus they had 4 hours a commute a day on top of that. I mean, that's just freaking insane. That's insane. Just so they could have a huge house or just so they could this or that. Now, if somebody really enjoys that lifestyle and you want to do it and it makes you happy, then it's not insane. Then it's a good choice for you. It's freedom for you if that's who you are. I've noticed that most people, that's a little much for them. So freeing yourself from false obligation is very important. So let's just recap really quickly, gang. All right. So what creates true freedom? Balance, ease of mind, and healthy and spoken boundaries. All right. Balance, accountability versus going way out and just flaking out on everybody. Ease of mind, being able to make the decision to not worry when you realize that, guess what? Most of life is out of your control. That's right. You've won an all-expense paid trip to Earth in a flesh suit. Ding, 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 ding. You win a carton of turtle wax and completely barely any control. Welcome to Earth. And then, of course, boundaries. Boundaries being healthy and being able to use your voice and not being walked all over. That's freedom. Because then you decide where you want to go and how you want to go. And you're doing so in a way that's being accountable to those who depend on you. Freedom. All right? And watch out for the freedom killers. When we don't do these things for ourselves, we get resentful. And we hold all these things in and we don't share it and we just stew and we blame other people for things that we don't do that we should be doing. And communication is a good way to break the resentment. And we might be secretly resenting ourselves, but projecting it onto somebody else too. That's always fun. Martyrdom. Be careful of falsely seeking approval for giving away what you wish you had, because then you're locked in this prison that never can go any farther of what you've given away. Okay? And really, if we can get to the other side of martyrdom and put your purpose in the world somehow, whatever that is, that's going to free up all that energy that keeps you in one place, giving away everything in order to get attention. All right? And then, of course, false obligation. Let's look really at what our obligations are and why. And I'm not asking everybody today to melt down and throw your lives out the window. What I'm asking you to do, according to these angels, not even me, it's this angel that's been talking to me about all this, this goes hand in hand with our Saturn and Uranus astrology, because Saturn is the planner and Uranus is the sudden change maker. Okay? Uranus loves freedom. Saturn is fine if we have freedom. It just wants to make sure that all the T's are crossed and all the I's are dotted within the freedom. And quite frankly, the more T's you dot and the more I's you cross, the more freedom you have. So a lot of us have really misconstrued adulting with the corporate world owning us and us giving away all of our dreams, when really, if we adult properly, we should be ultimately free. And we can get together with our partner or our loved ones, and we can talk about the accountability issues that are there, and we can make plans together where we as a family unit are not stuck under false obligation or stuck under the martyrdom or stuck under the resentment. We as a family unit can go forward in balance with ease of mind, because we now know what the boundaries are, because Saturn helped us cross our T's and dot our I's. And Uranus came in there and lit a fire under our keister and gave us all of the confidence in the world to make a change. So we can really use this oppositional energy, this Saturn versus Uranus energy right now, to really define what freedom is for us. And for many people right now, I see a lot of folks who are going through career changes, and this happened through COVID. I talked a lot through COVID about how folks were going to be realigning their compasses. And there's many, many people right now that are realigning their purpose in the world. They're realigning how they're going out into the world and who they are in the world. And this is really important to do that. It's really, really important. So one of the things I would tell you is that if you're somebody who is reevaluating career, Uranus wants you to go for it. Okay? Now, your Saturn inside of you right now is going to be like, well, that's not going to make you free. You're going to have to start all over again, and then we're going to be screwed, and we're going to go broke, and we're going to eat cat food and die in the wind. Saturn is built to panic a little bit. That's what it's there for. It's like Saturn's like your personal bookkeeper running around going, you spent too much on Starbucks last month, right? I got to remind you of that. It's like a whole thing. So instead of getting mad at Saturn, why don't we turn to Saturn and say, I know that's a risk, but here's the plan, Saturn. The plan is I want to build more freedom into my life, which means I need to change my job to telecommute. It also means that I need to lower my overhead on what I'm spending every month, just for right now maybe, and this is just one scenario, by the way, but I want to lower my overhead so I can make a change and give myself the quality of life I ever wanted. So we do have a plan. The plan is to spend less. The plan is to stop buying into stuff that I don't believe in. And the plan is to make the most out of what I have in my house and cook out of the freezer more and have a little more fun with my family. And the plan is to make it smaller so that my heart can get bigger. And then Saturn's like, oh, okay, well, that's cool. If you want to do that tomorrow, that's great, because it's really going to save my ledger. Thank you. And obviously, gang, that's just one example of freedom, but we are so hung up in America on financial enslavement. And it's really true. We've got student loans that people have had for 25 years that are 4 times what they took the loan out because of the interest. And, we're really not moving anywhere soon in the federal government to help the middle class out. So just be prepared for that. We're going to do our best, mostly local governments, small business. These are ways that are going to kind of shore things up. We have a big battle right now, a battle for the country that has nothing to do with Republicans and Democrats. It has to do with financial destabilization so other big superpowers can get out there and tromp around the earth without us meddling with them because we're too busy putting out fires at home. That's really what it's got to do with. But to make this much smaller, if we're going to be free in our life, then we've got to decide that we are free. And we've got to make peace with what is. If you're going to live in the United States, you're going to pay taxes on your land if you happen to own your land. That's the way it is. If you're going to drive a car, you're going to pay for insurance and you're going to pay a license plate. Making peace with a system that you choose to interact with is also freedom. Now, I'm not saying we can't improve these systems, and I'm not saying a lot of them don't need a swift kick in the butt. Yet I'm saying that if because remember resentment, right? Resentment is a freedom killer. If I'm resenting my license plate fees on my 2020 Jeep Rubicon, and I'm mad about it, then I'm not going to enjoy the freedom of that vehicle because I'm too busy choosing to be angry about the principle of participation that I went into when I get in that car. Nobody put a gun to my head. Nobody said, you must get out there and you must buy that Rubicon and you must pay that brand new vehicle licensing fee. Nobody said that to me. I chose that. So freedom is also owning your choices, gang. And that is really, really, really it. Owning your choices and owning the repercussions of your choices. As Americans, we are taught to blame everybody else for our crappy choice making. We overspend and we blame credit card companies for their interest rates. We go in and buy way too much house than we can afford, and we blame the bank for financing us. I mean, really. I swear to God. Saturn probably gets so sick and tired of trying to run down all the karmic financial lessons in the United States of America. I mean, Saturn probably has a special astrology tax just for the USA because we get out of accountability so easily here. Okay? So freedom is being okay. Go into acceptance with your choices and what your choices have net you. If you decide to sell everything that you ever made and go down and you and your wife and kids or you and your husband and kids move down to Baja in California or you move down to Mexico somewhere and all of a sudden you don't have the conveniences you had in the United States with grocery stores and Best Buys everywhere, and you become resentful and start blaming Mexico for not being, the addiction patch that the United States is, that's going to kill your freedom. Be okay. Be accountable. Say, oh God, I go into acceptance with the fact that I understood that maybe water isn't going to run all the time here. And by the way, if you go to Mexico City, it's a very wealthy city in a lot of places. So I'm talking like fun little beach towns where everybody dreams of just having a thatch hut and a margarita for lunch and breakfast and dinner. So be okay. Be free enough in your choices. And here's the big jazz hand ending, guys, with the last couple minutes we have. Gang, be okay to trust yourself. Ultimate freedom is trusting yourself to follow through on the choices that you make so that you are accountable to your choices, to the people in your life, and to yourself. And let's switch that around. Let's just switch that around. You're accountable to yourself and to the people in your life and to your choices. Because if you're okay to trust yourself, and this is something we've been disempowered heavily in the United States. Don't trust what you read on the news. Don't trust this or that. I can sell you something that's the truth. Come to my church. Don't trust that other one. It'll lead you to the devil. We've been heavily disempowered in the United States to not trust ourselves. But the big key, the big one takeaway, if I could give it to you, is trust. You've got to be able to trust yourself and the choices you're making for yourself and your family and and you've got to be able to trust the people in your life in order to be free. That's what it comes down to. Then it doesn't matter what you're spending. Then it doesn't matter where you're living. It matters that you've made good choices for yourself Freedom is about not being enslaved, basically, to someone else's idea of what you are or how you should live your life. So, don't victimize, don't steal, don't break the law, don't be an asshat. Yet trust yourself. And trust yourself that if you trust you, it will give people permission to trust themselves. And we will build a country over here and a world where freedom is not just something that the United States of America markets on, yet it's a way of life for all of humanity. So go have fun with that. And I will see you next podcast.